Yo, what's up, YouTube? It's Juju out here. No face cam today. It's gonna be a nice little ASMR video. All right. Anyways, I don't even know what that was. That was kind of like weird. But hey, so by this time, you guys have probably seen the game that I played with Faustian Pact. If you haven't seen that game yet, go ahead and click the link below. I guess if there's a link, I don't know. There's probably going to be a link. We'll see where that goes. But anyways, yeah. I ended up making a deck based around Faustian Pact. It's pretty fun, not gonna lie, and I decided to do like a little bit of a deck profile. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Just a quick disclaimer: this deck isn't perfect. I mean, it's pretty decent. Not gonna lie, it's pretty good, but there could be some tweaking involved. Like, I still haven't found like the optimal lineup that I'd like to do. Also, there are a ton of options for this concept. I just decided to, put this deck together, share it with you guys, and hopefully someone out there who sees this video can take this concept and maybe make it into a better deck. Yeah, but it's pretty fun. Not gonna lie, especially if you like aggro decks. I will give one more disclaimer though. It's not a deck to win with. This is a meme deck for sure. Like, if you're trying to win like the world championship, I don't think this would be a viable deck option. Maybe it can be in certain lineups. We haven't even talked about like lineups and how deck choices affect lineups. We can probably do that in a future video, but for the most part, yeah, this is a meme deck. This is for fun. Like, this, you play this against your friends because you want to pull some like crazy combo and it works. Yeah, sometimes it's not going to work, but hey, that's not all people play decks like that. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is going to be, I'm calling this Faustian Pact OP or Faustian Pact Go Burr because that's essentially what it is. This is a hyper aggro deck. Definitely no late game involved. Most games will either be decided by turn 6 or 7. But the overall concept of the deck, you pretty much play a ton of one-cost minions or cheap minions. You want to use your curve out into like maybe a 2-drop, like a Living Container or Munisian Infiltrator if you're playing against, like, I don't know, people who play Marshwalkers or Pyramid Wardens. And then from there, you're using Daemonic Offering to curve. Hopefully sacrifice one of your one-cost minions, maybe your Expectant Chicken Egg or maybe your Cardshark. Not the taunt, though. You typically want to keep the taunt, but you want to, trade off your Cardshark. And from there, when you're done with your hand, you play Faustian Pact. And then you reload. And then you hopefully draw into your Necroceptor. Or Necronomics, sorry, not Necroceptor. That is an option in the deck, though. You hopefully draw into your Necronomics to refresh 5 mana and use all of the cards that you just drew with Faustian Pact. 9 cards is a pretty significant refill, and if you have an empty hand when you play this card, you essentially draw 9 cards. The only drawback is you obliterate your hand, but hey, since most of your deck is one-cost minions, right, or... Yeah, there's a significant amount. Like, you can actually dump some cards from your hand, right? You can even play the 2 costs. And hopefully that'll give you enough momentum to win the rest of the game, because by as early as turn 4, you'll have a full board of hopefully 1 costs or maybe 2 costs, depending on what that is. And then you'll have enough momentum to win. Another thing to note, Faustian Pact also combos really well with Student of Truth. After you draw a card, you gain 4 favor. This is essentially, if you have this on the board while you play Faustian Pact, you get 36 favor, which is really good. This will net you at least 2 cards from the Sanctum, and if those cards are like Rune of Power, Lambasting Wand, the rune that gives you 2/2 taunt, it's pretty good. It also, I mean, you can also pull the boar and all that stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of synergy here. Yeah, like I said, this list isn't perfect. There are so many options that you can use, especially for one drops. Like, for example, you can use Desecrated Shrine, you can use Bombfly. Bombfly seems to be a good option because it deals 3 damage to the god, and you want to end games fast, right? Undead Roach is a viable option too. It seems like a good way to maybe get a card back into your hand after you've spent everything. Student of Society is also very good. It combos well with your Expectant Chicken and Cardshark. Wiccan Trapper is good for tech against weapon removal. It's a great card to trade with Necroceptor as well if you're running into a lot of Necroceptor players. Drider Sailweaver, very underrated card. 2/2 1 mana ward. Ward is a very hard thing to get over. Shield Bearer is also very good, although I don't like the 0 attack. I feel like it was so much better as a 1/1. But I digress. Skeletal Hoplite have some options as well. It's another, maybe if you run like Nether support in your build, you can try to play that. Yeah. So many options. I haven't even gone over like the hidden minions, the tribal orc, there's synergy, trial spirit, wild hog, inflammable imbecile. There are just so many options as 1-drops here, and it's pretty overwhelming. I ended up just going with the Expectant Chicken and the Cardshark in this list, because it combos well with Daemonic Offering, and Daemonic Offering is a pretty strong card for little tempo. Yeah, it destroy target for new creature, summon 2 random anims, they gain the tribe Nether. The anims are pretty good. Typically, there's one that's a 3/3, there's one that's a 2/2 with protected, there's one with 2/2 and frontline, and there's like another one that's a 3/2 with hidden. If you're trading this for like a token, that's major tempo. Like some turns I'll open like Expected Chicken or Cardshark, and then I'll use my bag of tricks to play Daemonic Offering on turn 2 if I have something, and usually that's a pretty significant tempo swing. But yeah, going over those 1-drops, there's so many viable options, and if you play with this deck, I highly recommend experimenting, because everyone has different playstyles, and hey, like one card might work for you while another card might work for another player. It's all really subjective at this point in time. Cool. Siren of the Grave is good, and Writhing Spirit. I chose these 1-drops because there's... If you draw into these, I might actually like just turn this to like maybe 1 copy, because you can totally fit in like Bombfly, for example. Bombfly seems like a good card to use. There's a lot of synergy there. But anyways, like I would probably I liked including these cards particular because if you draw these after you play Faustian Pact, you don't really care about the discard cost, right? Because you're losing your hand anyways. So you can play this and not have to worry about the consequences, which I thought was pretty good. And then I included the Deuteria here because it's a 1 cost that nets you more 1 costs, and then it gives you more threats later down the line. So because you're using Faustian Pact, you are going to go through your deck a lot. And you will run out of threats, especially if games like go longer than 6 turns. Like if you're playing against a control deck, or maybe you're playing someone with a lot of frontline or whatever. Deuteria is a way to kind of like keep your deck going with lots of threats. And because if you use this card post Faustian Pact, you should be able to draw into like the stronger versions of this card. So that's why I included it. Brimstone is also techable. I kind of like this because it gives you a burst option, or it gives you a way to deal more damage. But I could totally see Desecrated Shrine. God, I can't speak. I could totally see you subbing it with this card, because it essentially does the same effect without the draw. But yeah, Blight Bomb's in here for removal. I like Blight Bomb because it's it doesn't do damage. It destroys a creature with that health, and that has some pretty good implications, especially if you're playing against, or if you're up against like a Guild Enforcer, for example, where it's that 1 armor is a really hard thing to get over. So I like using Blight Bomb for removal, and it also like gets past like protected as well. So if you play this card against, like, maybe if you're playing against a war deck and it's the 3 mana 3/2 with protected, it goes through it and it kills. So very good card. Athenian Archer and Vanguard Axewoman are also good removal options. Yeah, but feel free to like play around with this because I think besides the whole Faustian Pact Necronomics, there's a lot of leeway to experiment with this deck. Cool. Moving on from the 1-drops, we got the 2-drops. Dangerous Ritual is the same thing as Blight Bomb. I like using Dangerous Ritual because 4 damage is pretty significant. And you get to draw a card. It's just a way to cycle through your deck so that you can get into your combo pieces. Sometimes you'll brick in the opening turns, and what I mean by brick is you don't draw Faustian Pact, so it's nice to have additional cycles so you can keep digging through your deck. So eventually, when you hit the Faustian Pact, you can go off. Iron Tooth Goblin, I decided to tech this card because relics are... Every deck pretty much runs a relic at this point. Unless you're playing like maybe Board Wipe Death, which might not have a relic, but I like this card, especially against like Necroceptor. It's just a hedge against like certain matchups. Why it's also good against nature decks because natures also have like early relic cards, so pretty good tech if you're running into a lot of like those kind of decks. Student of Truth, I don't know if I want a 2 of, but I like it as a 2 of just because it's pretty busted with Faustian Pact. Like, that's another way you can reload your hand, actually. You can play Student of Truth, Faustian Pact, and then get 36, like, favor in one card. And that's pretty good. You're not going to be spending your favor the turn you play Faustian Pact, though, because you're still going to have to obliterate your hand. But in the turns afterwards, especially if your Sanctum is good, you'll be able to refill your hand with something that you can use. In that same line, Student of Society is also a viable 1-drop in this deck. I didn't choose it because I felt like it was too overkill because I was running Student of Truth, but I could totally see like dropping a Student of Truth for a Student of Society because you are going to be summoning a lot. Living Container, I like this card in this deck. The reason being is because it's a 2-mana 2/3. And it's a great way to hedge against your opponent's removal. So typically what I'll do is if I feel like, if I have a Writhing Spirit or a Cardshark or Expectant Chicken on board, I can protect my board by summoning the Living Container. And then it forces them to deal with the Living Container, and if they do, they'll end up with a stronger minion to be replaced. It's a very good hedge against, like, I don't know, if you feel like someone's going to play like a Crystal Rain, which is the 5-mana 2 or 5-mana deal 2 to all your enemy minions from the Magic class. Yeah, it's a good hedge. I also think there are good examples like with Writhing Spirit as well, or even Vanguard Axewoman, like where you find situations where you can trade to a minion, and then when you trade favorably and this card is still alive but maybe with like 1 health, you can use like a Living Container to essentially revive it for later uses. And this is kind of busted. Like, Living Container on this card in particular, you get a 1-mana 5/5, which is kind of insane. Good value. All right, and then Magnesian Infiltrator. I think this card is very good against like certain decks. Any deck that runs like a 2/4 or a 1/4 or even Pyramid Warden, like, you'll like this card. Like, for example, the Warmonger Smith from War, the 2-mana 2/4, like, it trades favorably with that. Marshwalker, especially, Skeleton Heavy, all those cards. Like, this card is a pretty good card, especially in a deck where you want to eliminate your opponent's high health threats. Cool. And then moving on to the 3-mana cards, you have your Faustian Pact. Card is busted. I mean, it's busted. It's busted. I think if we got more like cheap cards for death aggro decks, we could definitely see this card be better. Also, it's just such a good reload. Like, you play your entire hand, play 9 cards, and like with Necronomics, you can play those cards and make use of it. You can also use it late game too. God forbid you end up in a situation where it's like turn 9 and your opponent has like cards that they can play. But this is a great refill button, and yeah, it has so much potential. The other card is Daemonic Offering. Destroy target friendly creature, summon 2 random anims. It's a really good tempo swing, especially if you can play it on turn 2. Not much to say here other than like it's very good, and it's one of the more expensive cards for a reason. Cool. Going over like those card choices. If you don't have these cards, fear not. Like, there are other options, right? For example, like this or if you don't have Expectant Chicken, or Siren of the Grave, which are some of the more expensive cards in the deck, you can totally, run like any of these 1-drops, really. We just went over them in like a previous section, so go back and like listen to like all those options. But seriously, there are a ton of options for 1-drops. Like, you can't really go wrong. And then for Daemonic Offering, that card is a little bit more tricky, but there are options, especially at the 3-cost slot. For example, let me scroll down. You have Outnumber the Living, which is pretty good. Summon a 1/1 for each enemy creature. If you are frenzied, summon 2 for each send. Like, I could see situations where you attack face, and your opponent has creatures on the board. You trade, you attack face to proc the frenzied, trade the rest of the minions to like get rid of board, or you can just play Outnumber the Living before you trade and then trade. It's pretty good. And then you could also do Curse Obelisk, which is another version of summoning like more 1/1s. Backline. The fact that it has backline means that it forces your opponent to use removal on this, because most of the time in these kinds of situations you're going to have board. So Curse Obelisk could also be like an option as well. And there are other options too. Honestly, you can play with the deck and see what works. Like Skull Scepter seems to be like a viable play. If you have Pyramid Wardens, man, like you can ball out, play some Pyramid Wardens. Skeleton Heavy is good. Larcenous Imp at the 2 spot. There's just a lot of viable options here, and don't be afraid to like play around, because everyone has different play styles, and if you find a card that works for you, like, go ahead and do that. Wicked Fae and Infernal Foot Soldier are also good ideas for the deck. Cool. Let me check my guide real quick. Oh, you guys are going to see my guide. Let me check my notes just to see if I missed anything. We went going first, cost priority. I'll put these notes in the description too, so you can go over this. But God Power. So God Power is going to be a little interesting. I'm still toying around with these ideas, to be honest, because they all seem very useful for the deck. For example, Blood Witch Ritual helps you control board in the early game, which is really crucial for the deck. I feel like if you lose early game, you're done. It's pretty much a lost cause, and you should probably concede and, play the next game to like maximize your time and gain the most experience possible. But yeah, Blood Ritual seems pretty good, which is why I put it first. Neferu Sacrifice is also pretty good. I just don't like how it costs 3 mana, but that cost is kind of mitigated because you run like so many like 1 costs. So I could totally see this card being another form of like reload. And then Soulburn also has its like merits, because you get to deal 1 damage to your opponent's god, and maybe like there are situations where in some matchups you'd want to do as much damage as possible. Well, in most matchups really, but some matchups, I don't know, you need a little bit more like burst or reach or damage or whatever you want to call it. So all 3 have merit. I like Blood Ritual because it gives you another removal option, and it's not damage. It's basically if you target a minion with 1 health, like that minion gets destroyed. So it's another way to get around like those guild enforcers or anything with like, I don't know, protected. Cool. So going over that main game plan, we went over the game plan, right? You'd want to develop a strong early game board presence with cheap minions. Living Container and Daemonic Offering and Faustian Pact is going to be your refill. Yeah, this is hyper aggro deck, yada yada. We got through that. Okay, got through the other card choices. Oh, general tips. Yeah, okay, we should probably go over this. Face is a place. You wanna hit your opponent's face most of the time, but I will say this: if you want to trade, or if you need to trade with your opponent's creatures to ensure that you do more damage next turn, I say do that. You don't want to like put all your chips in one turn and then your opponent has a board wipe and then they still have creatures remaining on the board. Like that's a really bad position to be in. So if you need to trade, do it. But you should be trying to do as much damage as possible every turn. Cool. Second tip, play around removal, make it awkward for your opponent to play, trade, and play cards. Yeah, what I mean by that is if your opponent has a god power that deals 1 damage, like you try not to leave 1 damage on the board or a 1 health minion on the board. Try to make it so they have to play other cards. If they have a canopy barrage, or if you think they have removal as a follow-up, you can use Living Container as like a way to kind of hedge against that. Yeah, always try to be cognizant of the removal options your opponent has during that time. And be cognizant of when they don't have it either. Like if you see a situation where the ideal play would be for your opponent to like play like a canopy barrage, for example, and they don't do it, that probably means they don't have the canopy barrage. So you can layer in those threats. Also too, like speaking on like card effects like canopy barrage where it's like randomized removal, you could totally use you can totally make a wide board to lessen the probability that your opponent hits the main threat that you want to keep alive. Yeah, so there are situations where you can make it awkward for your opponent. You just have to be like super cognizant about that. Okay, next, use Living Container. Okay, we went over that. You don't have to wait for Necronomics to play Faustian Pact. Yes, you don't have to wait for Necronomics to play Faustian Pact. That's for sure. The reason being is because you will probably draw into it. 9 cards is essentially a third of your deck, right? So you're bound to hit at least 1. If you completely brick, then that's like horrible luck. But for the most part, you should be able to run into the Necronomics. If not, it's not a big deal. It kind of is a big deal. But hey, that's why this is a meme deck, right? Because, you know, sometimes you're going to brick like that. But yeah, just be wary of that. Same thing goes for Student of Truth. Like, you don't have to have Student of Truth to play Faustian Pact, right? There are other opportunities. Sometimes you can just play Student of Truth on curve and just like gain favor the old-fashioned way, right? And that's completely fine. But yeah, the main thing is using Faustian Pact as a reload button, not as like a combo thing. But yeah, you're most likely going to draw the Necronomics. Like, I haven't run into... Okay, I ran into it once, and that was the craziest thing. Yeah, that was the craziest situation. But for the most part, I had 80% of the time, you will draw the Necronomics, for sure. Okay, next up, usually 1 Faustian Pact is good to win a game. Yes, if you use 2, you're basically running the risk of going into fatigue. But, I mean... There are some crazy. You can do some crazy turns with Faustian Pact, especially if you draw like 2 of them, and you have a Student of Truth on the board. But yeah, usually 1 Faustian Pact is good because you're setting up your board. You already have a board. Usually Faustian Pact is like a good reload for the board, and then you're usually pushing lethal by like turn 6, turn 7. Okay, watch out for life totals. Remember that Necronomics costs 5 health. Yeah, I did this during one of my games. I played like 2 Necronomics against a Slayer War deck, and man, I regretted that right away because I did have lethal for next turn, but what I forgot to consider was the fact that they had lethal their next turn. So Yeah, watch out for that, especially when playing against other face decks. And then Sanctum priority, yeah, you want to prioritize damage, draw, threats, or creatures. Everything else. This is like this bottom part is going to be like more matchup specific stuff, but don't pay attention to that right now because I'm still trying to like hash out the matchup specific stuff. But for the most part, like Sanctum priority should be damage, then draw, then your threats and creatures like the bull or the 2/3 with taunt, or even the 2/2 that gains 1 attack for every like 1 creature that dies. Like those are good threats. And then everything else like relic removal, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so there you have it, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. If you end up trying the deck, feel free to like, post some clips. I don't know, do something, have fun. Yeah. I do want to set a disclaimer though. Like this is a fun deck. Like it's a meme deck as well. So don't expect to be like, oh, I'm going to go undefeated, because there are definitely going to be some games. This is a very polarizing deck. There are going to be some games where you draw like crazy good and it's going to feel so awesome and you're just going to be like, hell yeah. But then there are also going to be games where you're playing against a board wipe death deck and you can't do shit. And that's completely fine, but no deck can have a 100% win rate, despite what Disguised Toast or any of the other content creators in YouTube say. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like, subscribe, do all of that, yada, yada, yada. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.